Hey Peppermint Patty group. So we're back for another guided reading lesson, and this week we are going to do a breaking words lesson. So we've done those before, but we'll go back over it and what to do in just a second. And then after we do our breaking words lesson, then we're going to read a book called Apples for Santa. So I figured that was a pretty fun book to read right before Christmas and the holidays. So we'll take a look at that book in just a little bit, but let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's get started with our breaking words lesson. So the first thing I want you to do is make sure you have all of these letters ready to go. So go ahead and pull these letters and make this word. And then make sure your other letters are close by because you're going to pull other letters other than just these. So have all of your letters close by so that you can grab those really easily. So go ahead and press pause. Make sure you have this word made with your letters, and then when you're ready, press play. All right, guys, so let's get started with our breaking words lesson. So remember, with breaking words, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you the word to make. I'm going to tell you what letters to switch out, and I'll give you the word. But your job is going to be, and I'll kind of help you and do it along with you, but your job is going to be to break the word. That's why it's called breaking words. So we're going to break the word at the first vowel, and then also that ending too, because our words are going to be a little bit longer this time, and so we're going to have a hunk and chunk or an ending on the end. So we're going to break the word and we're going to put it back together, and then we're going to read it, okay? And then I'll tell you what to do next. All right, so let's go ahead and start with this word that we just made, okay? You should already have this made. So what I want you to do is I want you to break the word apart. So remember, that means I'm going to break it at the very first vowel. So I see D, R, those aren't vowels, but my first vowel that I see is that E. So I'm going to break it at the E, and then I'm also going to break it at the ending sound, that ing, which I kind of already helped you with that. So I'm going to break it apart just like that. The D-R, E-A-M, and then I-N-G, okay? So make sure you have that. And then I'm going to point to the part, and I want you to say it. You ready? Dr, im, ing. Let's do it again. You ready? I'm going to point to it. You say it. Dr, im, ing. All right, let's put it back together, and let's say that word. You ready? Dreaming. And then I want you to make sure you take your finger and move it under the word too, and finger sweep and read that, just like I've done it. Finger sweep means like I'm sweeping the word underneath it to read it, okay? All right, that was a good start. So here's what I want you to do next. I want you to switch out your D with a C. So I want you to find your C. And let me grab my letters. I forgot to put them close by, just like I told you all to do, and then I didn't do it. That was silly of Miss Bell. All right, so we're going to switch our D with a C. So go ahead and do that. All right, and we're going to do the same thing. And remember, if you ever need, if I'm going too fast, you can always pause the video and just pick right back up once you're finished, okay? Once you're ready to catch up. All right, so we're going to break it. And remember, we're always going to break it at the first vowel that we see, which is that E. So we're going to push the CR, we're going to break that apart, and then we're going to break apart that ending sound. So you ready? I'm going to point to it, and then you say it. You ready? Kr, im, ing. You ready? Let's do it again. Kr, im, ing. All right, so let's put it back together. And then let's finger sweep and read that. You ready? So you take your finger and move it under just like I am. You ready? Creaming. Do it again. You ready? Creaming. Very good. All right, so now I want you to switch out the C and the R. So take the C and the R away, and you're going to replace it with an S and a T. So we're going to take the C-R away and replace it with an S and a T. And remember, press the pause button if you need to, if I'm going too fast. All right, so let's break it. So remember, we're always going to break it at that first vowel. So that's the first vowel that we see. And then we're going to break off the ending. You ready? I'm going to point to it. You say it. You ready? St, im, ing. Do it again. You ready? St, Eam, ing. Let's put it back together. And you ready? Let's finger sweep and read that. Steaming. Let's do it one more time. You ready? Steaming. Very good. All right, now we're going to add an R. So I want you to think about, where do you think you would add the R if we're going to, well, I take that back. I'm not going to ask you that because I don't want to give the word away. We're going to add an R right after that T. So just add that R right after the T. All right, you ready? Let's break apart the word. So we're going to break it apart, and we're still going to break it apart. Even though we added that R, we're still going to break it at the first vowel. So break that apart, and then break apart that ending sound. All right, you ready? I'm going to point to it, and then you tell me what it says. You ready? Eam, ing. You ready? Let's do that again. Eam, ing. All right, let's put it back together, and let's finger sweep and read that word. You ready? Streaming. Let's do it again. You ready? Streaming. Very good. All right, the last word you're not gonna make, so do not make this word. All you're doing is just looking at me, okay? I'm gonna write a word, and we're gonna, in our mind, in our heads, we're gonna break it apart, okay? We're not gonna actually move any letters. Just in our head, we're gonna think about how would we break that word apart, just like we did with our words that we did with our letters. So look at this word, and how would you break that apart to try to sound that out? So break it apart in your head. You ready? Let's read that word. You ready? Screamer. Very good. Hopefully that's what you said. You ready? Let's do it one more time. You ready? Screamer. Very good. So hopefully you saw how you can break it apart right here. Scr. And then you can break it apart here. Eam. And then our ending. Even though our ending was different than what we did up here with our magnetic letters, you can still do it the same way. You can still break apart that ending sound no matter what the ending is, whether it's ing, er, ed, it doesn't matter. You can still break that apart no matter what the ending is. All right, very good, you guys. So remember, this is really important to learn how to do because you all are working on really big words, and being able to break those words apart is going to help you be able to stretch out those bigger words. So we'll keep working on this and keep doing some breaking words activities. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our book. All right, so let's get started with our book. Our book is called Apples for Santa. And in this book, Mrs. Claus is really worried about Santa Claus because he's eating so many cookies, and she's worried that he's gonna get stuck in a chimney. So we're gonna read and see what happens. But before we do that, I want you to make a prediction of what you think is gonna happen in our story. So just looking at the cover, look at the picture, think about the title, Apples for Santa, and I want you to think about, what do you predict is gonna happen? And if there's somebody close by, press the pause button and go tell them. If there's not, press the pause button and just kind of think to yourself, what do I predict is gonna happen? And I want you to use that word predict, that big word. I want you to say, I predict, and then you tell somebody or think about what you think is gonna happen in our story. And then we'll see if you're right. And sometimes you are, sometimes you aren't, and that's okay. So make a prediction and then press play and we'll get started. All right, so one thing that I want you guys to not forget about is anytime that you get stuck on a word and you don't know what the word says, I don't want you to forget to use those strategies that we talked about at the beginning of the year. So those reading strategies like stretchy snake, eagle eye, lips the fish, flippy dolphin, Skippy Frog, and then the one I'm gonna kind of show you and kind of model for you what it looks like again is that Chunky Monkey strategy. And I don't want you to forget to use those because there are gonna be times that you still get stuck on words, and I don't want you to forget to use those strategies to help you figure out those words all on your own. Remember, there's not going to always be a grown-up or a teacher close by to just tell you the word. I want you to problem solve. I want you to figure out that word all on your own. So let's take a look at this word right here. And I'm going to pretend, now I know the word and you might know it too, and that's okay, but I'm going to pretend to get stuck on that word. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to use that Chunky Monkey strategy to help me figure out that word. So let's take a look at it. Let's see. All the elves and the reindeer. Okay, when I look at that word, I see a hunk and chunk right at the beginning of that word. If I'm using my Chunky Monkey strategy, that's what I'm looking for, hunks and chunks. I see that TH hunk and chunk at the beginning, and I know TH says that sound, just like that hunk and chunk that we've practiced. So when I stretch it out, I'm going to say the sound. Now, I also see another hunk and chunk. Now, this is one that we haven't practiced yet. We have not practiced this hunk and chunk yet, but I know this hunk and chunk. So when I'm looking at it, I see O-U-G-H. And I know O-U-G-H, and we'll eventually learn this one with everybody, with our whole class. But I know O-U-G-H says, aw, like look what I bought. Aw, it makes that short O sound. So now when I stretch it out, I think it's going to be a little bit easier to hear what that word is when I practice looking for those hunks and chunks. So let me stretch it out and say what I know those hunks and chunks say, those sounds. So let's say, you try it with me. Ought, 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 thought. Wait a second. Let me go back and read that and see if thought makes sense. All the elves and the reindeer thought. They thought and they thought and they thought. Does that make sense? Yeah, and it looks like the word thought when I look at those hunks and chunks. So don't forget, if you get stuck on a word, don't forget to use all of those strategies that we've practiced to help you figure out that word on your own. I don't want you to just go to an adult and say, what is this word? I want you to try to figure it out all on your own, okay? All right, let's keep reading and see what happens with Mrs. Claus and Santa. All right, so what's happened so far is that Mrs. Claus and the elves think they figured out a way to help Santa not eat so many cookies that he's not going to fit down the chimney. So I want to know, what do you think is going to happen next? So they're going to try to feed him apples, but do you think it's going to work? First of all, do you think it's going to work? And do you think that Santa's going to like it? Do you think Santa's going to be upset about it? Do you think he's going to like the apples? So I want you to press pause, and just like we did at the beginning of the story, I want you to go tell somebody or just think to yourself, what do you predict is going to happen at the end of the story? So what do you think is going to happen? What is your prediction? All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed our book, Apples for Santa. And I want you to think about, were your predictions right? So your prediction that you made at the beginning of the story and the one towards the end, were you right? If you were, great. If you weren't, that's okay too. Sometimes we make predictions and we're right, and sometimes we're not, and that's okay. But what I want you to do now is I want you to go back to Seesaw, and you're going to tell me the plot of the story. So remember, the plot is the problem and the solution. And we kind of mentioned it a couple of times as we were reading, but think about what was the problem in the story and what did Mrs. Claus and the elves decide to do to solve that problem? So what was the solution? So remember, solution means how do they solve the problem? And then you're going to go back to Seesaw, and on your sheet there's 3 spaces for a problem and solution, but you only have to fill in one of those spaces, okay? Don't feel like you have to fill in all 3. I want you to just tell me what was the big problem in the story and what was the solution. How did they solve it, okay? All right, I can't wait to see what you guys come up with and tell me, and I hope you enjoyed our story.